My name is Erica Curcio. I am a registered art therapist and also a licensed mental health counselor. And I work, like Bob said, I work at Goddard House Assisted Living as their community art therapist. I am also in private practice, and I've been in private practice for about 3.5 years now. And the premise of it is I go to the homes of people living with dementia and I provide art therapy. Ways that you can find me if you're looking for me. I am on Instagram at the Traveling Art Therapist, and on Facebook, I am at the Traveling Art Therapy. So those are two ways that you can find me. And art therapy is a piece of my every single aspect of my life. Art therapy is a part of it. I just live, eat, and breathe it. My goals for today. My goals for today is I want you to learn what adding the arts to the life of someone living with dementia can do. So I want you to know that there are benefits, and the benefits are so great. I also love for you to learn and understand the value and support that one-on-one art therapy can have for someone living with dementia and also their families. So realizing that the services are specifically for the person with dementia, but that others in the household can also benefit from the service, from art therapy. You're going to be able to identify and define moments of creative flow while also learning how to keep that creative flow alive and how to really have somebody living with dementia create art and feel really good about themselves. And you're also going to learn about the benefits, how the benefits of virtual art therapy can extend beyond the person living with dementia. So offering services to care partners virtually can impact the person living with dementia, even if you're not working with that person. And then at the end, you're going to actually be able to start your own image collage, which you'll learn more about at the end. I'm not going to go into that right this second. So a great place to start is what is art therapy and what isn't art therapy. So for a service to be considered art therapy, a credentialed art therapist has to be facilitating the art therapy. So it's a credentialed art therapist working either with an individual or a group and encouraging that person or that group to express themselves through the use of art materials. Anyone can work with an art therapist. So this presentation is about people living with dementia and their care partners, but anyone can work with an art therapist. Generally, when people hear I'm an art therapist, they say, oh, do you work with kids? Because I think that's just where people's minds go. And yes, it works with kids and you can get amazing results, but you can also get amazing results as a regular, typical person. Right? You don't have to have something wrong with you to participate in art therapy. It can be a way to bring about change in your life. It can be a way to bring things to the surface that you didn't know were going on for you. It can be a way to really have a vision for your business. It could be a way to have a vision for your life. The arts are so powerful and images are so powerful. And so how do you become an art therapist? So to become an art therapist, some of you may have heard when we were chatting at the beginning, you need a master's degree. So I have a master's degree from Lesley University. So they're an accredited university. And then after you graduate, you have to work 2 years in the field, post-master's, under another credentialed art therapist in order to become a credentialed art therapist. So to be able to say that I'm a registered art therapist means that I worked in the field 2 years, I had supervision, and I learned from another art therapist even after I got my master's degree. And it's also really important to know that there are so many different styles and approaches to art therapy. And that's what makes it wonderful, is because I could be talking to another art therapist and we could have two totally different perspectives. But the thing that we both will find true is that the arts are powerful. And based on our styles and approaches, we can bring things out in people that they didn't even know was sitting there. My art therapy, to learn a little bit about me. So I said I had a master's degree from Lesley. I am a registered art therapist. I am also a licensed mental health counselor, and I've been both of those things for 4 years now. And the amazing thing about going to Lesley, I talked about all the expressive therapies under one roof before, but also they set you up to become a licensed counselor. And being a licensed counselor, you can take insurance, you can work with people just doing talk therapy. Having that art therapy credential allows me to not only be able to do talk therapy and have all those skills, but it gives me this additional language, and it's the language of art, and how using certain supplies can bring out things in people, and how having the knowledge from going and getting that master's degree that certain supplies are not going to work with certain people, and certain supplies can actually be detrimental to somebody in their own healing process. And if I didn't have that schooling and that learning those things, then I wouldn't know that. So in the program, it's really about learning about not just the supplies, but like how to get somebody to really open up to you, and using that licensed mental health counselor and that registered art therapist to have this fusion of, me offering my services to someone. My niche is people living with dementia and their care partners. I also work with older adults who don't have dementia. But where I feel most home is working with people living with dementia. I believe that they may not be able to advocate for themselves, and that it is my role and my job to advocate for that person. And that if people can see this person doing things that they assume that they could not do, then I feel like I have really shown that people living with dementia, they have this creative potential. We all have creative potential, and it's just getting that out of that person. And how I do that is my approach. And so I work person-centered, which is really just the person's story, and using their story and learning from their families and their caregivers about them, so that I can fuse that into our time together, and really figuring out what this person's strengths are, and focusing in on those strengths and bringing that out so other people can also see that this person still has skills, they still have capabilities, and there's still a person there. And the arts can be very powerful in showing that a person can still be there. And my goals are to make somebody feel empowered, to have them feeling confident about themselves. Getting a dementia diagnosis does not make someone feel confident about themselves. If anything, it makes them feel the opposite. They have awareness that they're losing things. And even later on, I in the disease process, I do believe that people are very aware that they can't do things. And that's why depression is so high. And so if we can figure out what this person can do and what they can do successfully, and they can still do good, we empower them to feel confident about themselves. And through art, I am giving them the supplies, and I am handing over control. So if I'm working with someone for an hour, they're getting that control back. And that the power of that trickles into the rest of their day. And that feeling of control, that feeling that they once had, is now like back, and this reminder of who they are. So my big question for everyone is, I want to know, what is art to you? How do you define it? What is your relationship? It's really loaded. Like, the word art is very loaded. So what I'd like you to do is to type in the chat box, either how you define art or what your relationship is to art. And I'll give you like 30 seconds. And when I say like press enter, everyone's going to press enter at the same time. So just start typing.
How exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. I'm just going to read the room. Oh, wait, no, I didn't mean to do that. No. All right, I'll give you like 10 more seconds. Okay, I want you all to press enter. Oh, everybody's pressing enter. Just press enter. Okay. So art is a creative outlet using different media, music, coloring, painting. Art is an expression of feeling inner self, beauty, tranquility, softness, connection, exploration. It's subjective, personal, experiential. It makes you feel something, a window to the world. What you're going to notice about all of these is they're different. Somebody said music. Like when I think of art, sometimes I think of music and sometimes I don't think of music. But so we define art differently based on our life experiences. And so the word art, it's pretty loaded and it's jam-packed with different definitions and different feelings that people might have about it. And I want to really break it down a little bit. So like going beyond or before you learned about art, before you took an art class in elementary school and learned to, most people learn that if you look at art, it's whatever the artist says it is, right? So if it's a Picasso, it's what Picasso says it is. And people try to dissect it and come up with their own things out of it. But if we really take art back to the ancient world, it's been around since the beginning of time. Art, like the first art was the cave paintings in Lascaux, France. And so what those cave paintings are is their communication. Someone was trying to tell us something through the symbols and the lines and the shapes that they created. They were trying to tell us a story, reveal a message. Think of the pyramids and how the Egyptians have their own language through all of these different wonderful symbols, right? And all it is really, if you think about it, it's a message. Like someone's trying to tell us something. And if you keep art as that, then it might actually help make art less something that only artists can do in a museum. It will allow you to see art on a different platform. And so if we see art as just communication, if we see art as a facilitator for conversation, if we see art as if we see art just as not something in a museum, like which of one of these is art? Like if we question, like what is art? And so the answer is that all of them are art. Everything around us is art. We have art all around us. If there's a picture on your wall, that's maybe a more formalized piece of art. If you're a really organized person and you like having everything stacked a certain way, and there's these women who have this organizing company and everything's in colors. Well, that's art. Like that. How we set up our spaces is art. The interior design that we do, it's all art. How we organize things. And it tells other people something about us. How we do that, and that is no different for someone living with dementia. The art that is created is telling someone something about us. There's a level of communication, and to that extent, I want to challenge you to think that every mark has meaning. A mark could look like anything, right? A pile on a stack of papers, like it has meaning, it has purpose. And art supplies, if we're talking about creating art, that art supplies can be a transmitter, right? So the person who's creating art is using the art supply to put their emotions, their thoughts, what they're trying to communicate on the paper, and that those hard feelings are now on the paper. Whatever it is that they're putting on the paper, it's on the paper. And one of the amazing things that I found over time working with people is that the art allows them to empty their cup. And what I mean by this is some of you may have seen a video of this or have heard of this before, but think of your emotions and think of a cup. And so every time that you are aggravated, overwhelmed, feelings that, just don't make you feel good, more water is being added to your cup. And so the water keeps going in, going in. And if you have no ability to release that water, if you have no coping skills, then what's going to end up happening is the water is going to keep filling. And at some point, that water is going to overflow. What art supplies can do for someone living with dementia is to allow them to use those art supplies to get those feelings out and to empty their cup just a little bit. And families have said that after the art session, their loved one was more calm. Their loved one might usually have a behavior in the afternoon and maybe they weren't impacted the way that they usually are. And so something about the art creative process allowed them to be able to cope better. And I really believe that it's just the emptying of their cup. It's giving them more space, more ability to, next time they feel overwhelmed, well, they can take it in versus having some kind of behavior or explosion of some sort if we're thinking like water flowing out of a cup. And so when we think of marks having meaning and that the art supplies help communicate something and that person's putting something on the paper, whatever that is, these two images are marks, and these two images have meaning behind their marks. If you were to look at art, generally, which one would you say is art? And so people often go to the painting, right? But both of these images, they have meaning behind them. The one where it's a circle with the dots, that took that person 10 minutes and it was done with precision. It was done with dedication. It was done with trying to verbalize, this person who had aphasia, something to me. And I knew when I left that day that that piece of paper had some meaning that I couldn't understand, but I knew that it had meaning. And when I went back the next week, this client's spouse said, "You were right, that paper, something about that paper." I was trying to show my husband about something else that we had done that day and together, and he kept pointing to that paper and he just kept saying, "Yes, yes, yes." And so that paper, oftentimes, like, we just want to toss something that doesn't look like art, but just be aware that that can have meaning to it, just as much meaning as the other image that looks more like the definition of art, that there is meaning behind markings. And I will say that both of these images were created by the same exact person. And through the therapeutic relationship, I was able to take this person living with dementia from making small marks to being very meticulous and to really just bringing their arm across the canvas and making big marks. And they still had the same precision, but they were more alive and that they could openly express creatively as they were going across the canvas. And so, how do we enhance somebody's quality of life? Like, what does that look like using art? And so, creating a safe space for the person living with dementia and making sure that they they feel good in the space and that it's a space that maybe it's not a space where they spend all of their time or all of their tasks that they have to do are not in this space. Maybe it's a different space. It's a space just set aside for art, or the setup is just set up for art at that time. Big piece of what I do is giving control back to people. So giving them the art supplies and allowing them to really explore the art supplies in a safe way and figuring out which art supplies work for that person. But I am really just, I'm part of the process, but I'm not in the process. So it's all their marks. If, for instance, like if they need to cut something up, I'm there with them. They're cutting, but I'm there. And really knowing that, remembering that, like, if we don't let them use the skills they still have, they will lose those skills. And so, how do you empower someone? By giving them that control and allowing somebody to cut up a piece of paper. Reminding them of their greatness. So, doing something like, allowing somebody to use scissors when normally they wouldn't be allowed to use scissors. Reminding them of how great they are by validating their experience. So as they're creating, I might say something to the extent of, you look like a person who knows what they're doing. You must have been a person who always knew what they were doing your whole life. And 9 times out of 10, then they'll be like, yeah, I am. And really validating that their experience and what I'm seeing, I'm also sharing with them, and what I'm hearing, what they say, repeating that back to them, showing them that I'm there, that I am in it just as much as they are. And then the opportunity to speak through images as they are, that the person's able to talk about what they created. Believe it or not, something like these 6 dots can be a 5-minute conversation. And to anybody looking at it, it just looks like dots. But there was a whole therapeutic experience going on with that. And so just something that this person's wife said was, I saw a metamorphosis in him when you entered his life. He had always been an art connoisseur and a supporter of the arts, but never himself created art in any way. You opened his world to him with simple tools, and he developed more confidence and pleasure because of those hours. So 1 hour with him went on through the rest of his week, so that he was able to create something tangible that had a memory to it that he could reflect back on, and is able to have conversations with other people about. So 1 hour actually was 5 extra hours in the span of a week, that were the good feelings, the being able to have something up on the mantle and something that this person was proud of, and just allowing that person to feel good about themselves, but also that their family felt good about it. So his daughter was with us one time and just watched how I interacted with her father, and she took those skills that I was just using normally and was able to then use them with her father later on, and said, I never thought about doing it this way, or I never thought, oh, maybe I should offer less things to him. Maybe this puzzle that we were trying to do is just too difficult. There's too many pieces, and using less was actually greater for my father. And so my journey working with people living with dementia was, I just wanted to work with people with dementia. I wanted to work with them. I felt like they were the ones that needed me the most, and that creating art made them feel good, and creating connections with me, with the art supplies, reconnected them to themselves. And something I just didn't notice until the previous family's quotes was that it actually affects the whole household. So by that, again, like just 1 hour with me changed up the whole household, and the family saw things, tried things, and really just were deeply invested in giving their loved one like the best quality of life. And I really believe it's, emptying that cup for that person and allowing the care partner to really see that, and reminding the care partner that this person does still have capabilities left, and we can focus on those, and really bring them out, and also just like have something tangible around the house that they can have a present memory with. And so the person with dementia is really seen as a person again. They're seen as someone who, again, like just has skills. I know I keep saying that, but they have skills that are still are left to be used. And so care partners, they were benefiting this whole time. And I didn't realize it. My journey was just working with people living with dementia. And by doing that, it just opened up the whole world for the whole family. And so when COVID-19 hit, I couldn't work with people in person. I just didn't feel comfortable working both at an assisted living and then going to somebody's house. So I cut it off, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to help people? I need to work one-on-one with somebody in the moment, like right next to them. And then just the virtual world just opened up. And I went on Instagram, and I just made an Instagram account. And then I started to see people's real lives. I was seeing in the moment people with their loved one living with dementia, and the struggles that they were having, the successes they were having, and being amazed at all of these people taking care of a loved one at home. Because previously I worked in assisted living, and then I would just spend an hour in somebody's house, and then I would be out. But seeing the day-to-day life of a care partner, of someone living with dementia, it just really opened my eyes, especially seeing how many millennials are taking care of their parents who are living with early onset, or just have parents that are a little bit older for like them being a millennial, and just seeing people like taking care of one loved one with dementia, and then sometimes people taking care of both parents living with dementia in their home. And I was just so amazed by this. And I also saw that people were just thirsty for engagement tips and tricks. And just giving art ideas on my Instagram account turned into people asking if I could do virtual art therapy, which I didn't really know how to do. And so I was like, I just want to teach people. I want to be able to coach care partners and mentor them, and really make them feel confident. And because when they feel confident, then their loved one feels confident. And so creative mentoring caregivers was just this like thing that I started doing. And really starting just as I would start with a family that I'm working with when I'm doing art in the home. And so asking them, what do they want to gain? Where do they struggle the most? And then the big question is like, what is their wish for their loved one with dementia? And oftentimes it's, I just want them to be able to connect to something. I want my mom who used to paint to start painting again. And creating this space virtually, like over Zoom, where people can ask questions, get feedback, and collaborate, and really participate in virtual art therapy, where they create on the other side of the screen and I create on my side of the screen. And we all create the same thing, but we're creating side by side. And what I mean by that is the person with dementia is creating, the care partner is creating, and then I am creating. And we're all creating together, but individualized. And that person living with dementia, the creating is meeting them where they are, so that their loved one doesn't really have to step in and their loved one doesn't have to be like, oh, you're doing it wrong, or you need to move this. It's really an empowered experience between the three of us. And after that happens, the care partner then meets with me separately for creative mentoring. And we talk about the session, we talk about any of their questions that they have about dementia and any strategies that they feel like, I feel like might help them going forward. And what's wonderful is that what it is that we do create together, it's approachable and it's repeatable. So that person, I want that care partner to feel confident. I want them to feel like they can do this project over and over again with their loved one and still have success every time. And so this is just one of the virtual people that I work with, and she sent a picture of what her mom created the first time we met. And so she said, art therapy has been a great way for me to connect with my mom who has dementia. It allows us to be creative side by side, sparks conversation, and is a structure that brings us both joy. And so I started working just with people with dementia, wanting to bring that joy to people with dementia, not knowing that I can also bring that joy to a care partner. And a happy care partner is a happy person with dementia. A happy person with dementia is a happy care partner. They go hand in hand. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about how, like what I would teach to someone, a care partner, but also how I approach doing art therapy with someone. And the first step is figuring out structure. So figuring out what structure this person needs and what structure they don't need. And it is a journey. I always start with lots of structure and then dwindle off the structure to figure out at what point on the scale is this person lots of structure to open-ended. So how much structure do they actually need? And by structure, I'm talking about on the paper or whatever we're creating. If it's a step-by-step project, do they need something like that, or do they need something that is just like open? They can just do whatever they want with. So when I'm assessing for structure with someone, I start with a piece of paper and a circle and a prompt. So you saw the picture a couple slides back where it said like this new year, I wish. So by open-ended prompt, I mean that something that can potentially be answered. Today I was working with someone and I wrote on the piece of paper, it said, I wish I could. And so what I'm trying to figure out are a few different things. So I'm trying to figure out if this person needs a prompt, if this person can read. So like, I wish I could today when I was working with someone, I was trying to figure out, you know, I noticed this person was sad, like just very sad. So getting on that clinical level with them and figuring out, you know, what does this person wish for? What do they wish that they could do? And I was trying to figure out if words meant things to them. So the person read it out loud, but they weren't able to answer the question. So I'm aware and attuned to, can they read and comprehend it and then be able to answer it? Other people will read and they'll just be able to finish the sentence. And then for some people, they can't read anymore. Those letters have no meaning to them. And so figuring that out when I'm first working with someone is really important. The circle within the paper is to figure out, you know, is this person going to go inside the circle? Are they going to go outside the circle? Do the lines not mean anything to them? What do they need? Do they, sometimes when people see the circle, they actually will outline the circle with whatever art supply they're using, and then oftentimes go in. Somebody might outline and go out. Really trying to figure out what is it that they see and what is successful to them. And do they disregard the lines? Do they not need the lines at all? And I'm also paying attention to how they're speaking to themselves and how they're speaking just outwardly. The idea behind this is that they have this choice. They have choices that they can make on this paper. And to give people choices that meet them where they are is the best way to kind of create this therapeutic relationship and to make them feel safe. When I'm giving, just one other thing to note is that when I'm giving somebody an art supply to use, I'm not giving them like 5 art supplies. I'm giving them 2 art supplies of like maybe 2 contrasting colors. And when I'm offering it, I'm, do you want the green one or do you want the orange one? And really having that person have multiple opportunities to connect with whatever I'm asking. So I'm mentioning a color, I'm using a gesture, I'm using, my voice to give them the option. And they don't have to say, I want the orange one. All they have to do is just tap. And generally that's what people do is they just tap which one they want. And so when you figure out what level of structure they need and like where they fall along the scale, then you can work from that spot. It does take several sessions to figure that out and to figure out, what does success look like for this person. And just with dementia, we all know like every day is different. So there's that piece that one day this could be really, really successful. And then the next day it's not. And it's just being okay with that and being flexible and having, when I go to somebody's house, I actually have multiple ideas before I start with them, because if this wasn't going to work today, then I have something else that I can lean on. And creative flow is basically a state of deliberate mark making with focus. So creative flow, you've seen it, where someone is creating and they're just in it and they're head down creating, and that is creative flow. That's what it looks like. We can set somebody up for this by giving them the best setup. And the image on the right is this idea that there's a contrasting background, so that brown background to the white canvas. And so visually they can see the difference, that there's 2 options. Let's just say, for instance, they chose those 2 colors. So those 2 colors would be in the paint containers, and that the foam brushes would already have the paint on it and it'd be rich in that color so they can identify which one is which. And having the brushes angled towards them so that all they have to do is just pick it up. Really integrating the sensory experience. And so what do they see in terms of hearing? That I know it's not always easy, but having a quiet space and that background noise impacts somebody's experience. It will always impact somebody's experience. So just having quiet so that they can just focus. Hearing, seeing, touching, like what are they touching? What kind of stimulation are they going to get from it, from the physical touch? And when you set somebody up in this way, they're more likely to get into that creative flow. And the one thing about creative flow with people living with dementia is it often goes against our natural inclination to have a conversation or to make a remark about somebody's artwork. Somebody's creating art and you're just so impressed by it. All you want to do is be like, oh my God, you did such a great job. This is great. You're doing wonderful. And what happens is when you start to talk to somebody who is in a creative flow, you unfortunately take them out of creative flow. So the amount of time it took them to get into that creative flow is all gone. It's like starting over, because people living with dementia have difficulty multitasking. A lot of us just naturally have difficulty multitasking. And so the brain oftentimes, it all depends on the person. Some people can do this, but when you're later on in the disease process, that you really can't multitask. So you can't talk and create art at the same time. And so sitting there next to somebody and just being quiet, it feels very foreign. I only engage with someone when they engage with me because I want them invested in what they're doing, and they so look like they're enjoying. And for me to say something to take them out of it, then I feel like it's a disservice to that person. So if somebody's in a state of flow and they're creating, the best thing to do is to just let them keep going. And at some point they'll lean back, or at some point they'll say something, and that in that moment, that's an invitation for you to be a part of the experience with them. And for instance, if someone says something about their artwork, I might reply back and I'll be like, you really know what you're doing. You look like a person who's always known what they're doing. And so I want to really strengthen them. I want them to feel confident about themselves. So those are the kind of comments that I would make. It's not about picking things out of their artwork and saying, wow, that looks like a bird, or us making our own judgments about their art. It's about them telling us about their art. So you might say something like, can you tell me a little bit about your artwork? And then they can tell you something. Wow, like what a combination of colors. What do you think? And waiting for their response. So it can take someone living with dementia up to 10 seconds to take in what you're saying and be able to answer you. So when you do ask a question, give them that space to be able to respond. And you'll be really surprised that once you give them that really long length of time, they'll probably answer you. And then there's image work, and we're going to get to your image collage. This can be the first entry point for some with art. Art is all around us, and we can use images for conversation. We can use images to talk about things maybe we've never talked about before. It's different from looking at pictures from someone's life and talking about and reminiscing about their lives. It's more about just using everyday images or fine art images to talk about art. And oftentimes, just from an art therapy perspective, when people are talking about art and they're mentioning things or they're talking about their own art, people are actually talking about themselves. They're transferring themselves through the artwork, and they might actually tell you a story about themselves that maybe you didn't actually know. So there's two methods that I want to go over with you. One is, using fine art, and then creating your own. So famous fine art images. This is a way to pique someone's curiosity with fine art. And there's a program called Meet Me at MoMA. There's also, we have at our MFA, they do this program where it's organized in such a way that you talk about art that is categorized in some way. So it's clumped together. You can Google Meet Me at MoMA and you can find all of their images that they use. The idea is to make the arts more accessible to people living with dementia. So prior to COVID, people could go into the MFA and take a tour and talk about art. You can Google, I bet you can Google and come up with videos of people living with dementia and talking about famous art. And it's really about asking them what they see. It's not about what we see, it's about what do they see, and giving them the opportunity to tell you what they see, and really opening up a dialogue about images, about sculptures, about fine art. And I did this the other day with someone virtually, and we talked about images. And when an image was handed over to the person with dementia from the daughter, he said, "Oh, this looks so familiar to me." And his daughter was just shocked because her dad's a civil engineer. He is a veteran. He never was interested in art. And all of a sudden that we spent 45 minutes talking about fine art. And that's just not something that she assumed he could do, but they can talk about things. We just have to give them the space, and we have to give them the opportunity to talk about things. And so you have your fine art images, and then you might have 3 facts about the image or the sculpture, whatever you're talking about, and then kind of integrate that. So like you're integrating the facts and what someone thinks, because you've learned at this point what they see and what they think about the image. And also just one thing to be aware of is that some people may have, aging eyes, macular degeneration. So they may not see exactly what you see, and that is okay. It is okay to just hear what they see and it's not reality. That is okay. That is giving them an opportunity to tell you what it's like to see the world through their eyes. And then the other way that you can use images is magazines. Like we all have magazines, and we all respond to visual stimuli all day long. Like images are all around us. I bet if you looked around your room right now, there's something in your room that's not your magazine that speaks to you in some way. And what you can do is just like those fine art images, you can cut up images and figure out, and you present it in such a way that the person living with dementia can have a conversation over an image from a magazine. It doesn't cost you any money to do this. You don't have to go to a museum to do this. It's in our magazines, and there's wonderful magazines with huge pictures in them. And you find out through trial and error what your loved one is really interested in. And so now I'm gonna turn it over to you. You are going to take out your magazine and you're gonna find images that are provocative, find images that have high contrast, something that reminds you of something. Find an image that has the potential to tell a story. So if you see an image and you are getting something out of that image, just rip it out of that magazine. And you want to take that image, you want to cut it up so it has clean, straight edges, and then you're going to glue it to a backing. So I'm going to go off of my screen share. How do I do this? Oh, share. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to, does everybody see me big? I just see Bob's face. Can everybody like see me big? Or am I just small?
I think it needs to be put into speaker view. If everybody can put Erica into speaker view, then you'll see her.
Can you see me now? Just a thumbs up. Okay, yeah. So you're gonna look through magazines, find some kind of image, and you're gonna rip it out, cut it so it's clean, and then you're gonna glue it, if you have it, to a black background or just any kind of piece of paper. I prefer black, but if you don't have black, that's fine. And you're gonna clean it up, and I'll give you like, oh, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes. Just find one image and.
Just so you know, we have about a little less than 15 minutes left.
Yeah, I see that. I wonder if there are a lot of questions, we could also do this as asking questions, as like people are asking me questions, if that's easier.
Let's see how long it takes. Give a couple minutes for that. I don't know if everybody brought magazines with them, but give it a try, and then we can leave the last 5 minutes for questions.
So everybody's good with my instructions? Just give me a thumbs up. Okay, perfect.
I wish I had background music.
Yeah. I lost my sunlight while I was doing that.